Um, First off, I wanted to start by, saying that I've been thinking about this for a while now, and it's just something I wanted to, share with all you. You know how you get an idea after watching something, and you're like you just want to share your thoughts. Well, that's what happened here. I was recently rewatching the TV show Highlander the series, because it's on Peacock right now, NBC's other subscription service. Well, what it is I've rewatched all the first 5 seasons and 4 of the episodes of season 6. It's the first two and the last two of season 6 because, like I said in the video where I reviewed it, well, seasons 1 through 5 were fine. Season 6, like the middle of season 6, left something to be desired, among other things. Well, I was recently looking that particular show, Highlander the series, up on Wikipedia, and I discovered something, and I wanted to talk about that, among some other things. Well, as I was reading through it, and it's just like one of the things, like I read it when I watched the show the first time, and it just, didn't process. But it did this time for some reason. What it is I noticed it was like a part where it talked about at the end of season 5, Stan Kirsch, who played Richie Ryan on Highlander, wanted off the show. And eventually Adrian Paul did too at the end of season 5. Well, and of course I mentioned the fact that part of season 6, like that middle part, they were trying to figure out who they wanted to use to do a spin-off Highlander show out of the Lady Immortals, and they ended up doing Elizabeth Grayson's Amanda. Not to knock Elizabeth Grayson. I mean, she's a very pretty lady. She's a very good actress. But the show, and I've tried rewatching that show again. It's called, the show that Elizabeth Grayson's Amanda ended up on, is called Highlander the Raven. I can only watch maybe like the first 15 minutes of the show before I have to turn it off. It's that bad. I mean, and it's a very badly written show. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Elizabeth Grayson at all. Don't get that idea. There's nothing wrong with her. It's just a very badly written script. I can see why they canceled it after one season. I mean, really. I mean, I can't even get through one episode. That's pretty bad, How I would have handled it is, okay, Adrian Paul and Stan Kirsch both wanted off of Highlander, the series that Adrian Paul was the star of. Here's how I would have handled that, okay? What I would have done is I would have had Ahriman, who is like they used that like at the end of season 5 to segue into season 6. What I would have done is had Ahriman like somehow frame Richie Ryan for a murder that he didn't commit, or like there was like no possible way he could have done it. It's like kind of like in, I forget which season it is. I think either season 4 or 5 where Richie gets kidnapped by this girl trying to save her farm or something in France. Is something like that where it's like Ahriman somehow manages to frame Richie Ryan for, like, say, kidnapping somebody or murdering somebody or something like that. Like kidnapping, murder, bank robbery. Because, I mean, at the beginning of the series, and, like, season 1 episodes, like the first, like, 5-6 episodes, it all talks about in the first season about how Richie's a juvenile delinquent and all this stuff, and that would bring, what it would do is it would tie it all together nicely, and it's like have Richie Ryan end up in jail, because at the end of season 6, and this is why I bring this up, at the end of season 6, there's an immortal that comes back for Duncan because the right at the end of World War II, there was this Scottish fellow that Duncan knew who was an immortal, who him and his mortal girlfriend at the time blew up someplace, and the other immortal and his girlfriend ended up going to jail and spending the rest of her life in the prison. Well, it could be something like that. It could have been worked out to where that, like, he gets falsely arrested for that. And then what happens is, okay, Duncan ends up defeating Ahriman, which is what happens at the end of episode 2 of season 6. Like, he finally ends up beating it, Ahriman. Well, what ends up happening, what they should have done is, like I said in that other review, tack those first 2 episodes of season 6 onto season 5, but work that out differently, but leave it as a cliffhanger where, okay, Duncan defeats Ahriman. Richie's in jail for something he actually did not do, and they figure out DNA testing and blah blah blah, and it's leave it as a cliffhanger, kind of like what they did at the end of season 3 of Forever Knight, where that's what happened. Excuse me, I'm not going to ruin the ending of Forever Knight for y'all, but that's pretty much what happens. Is the end of Forever Knight, it's cliffhanger. Well, that's what they should have done, is work it to where at the end of that season 6 episode 2, work it to where, okay, somehow Connor McLeod, who's the Highlander in the movies, gets a hold of Duncan from the TV show, because they were, Connor was on, Christopher Lambert was on the TV show in the first season, the very first episode. And they talked about Connor throughout the, series. Well, what else they could have done is, while Duncan is busy fighting Ahriman, he gets contacted by Connor, saying Connor needs help, and just leave it at that, and then transfer it over to the movies, which is what ended up happening. Because at the end of season 5, beginning of season 6, what it was is they transferred Duncan over to the movies to be with Connor. That's what actually happened. So that's why I was work it to where it's okay, leave it as a cliffhanger where they're okay, Connor needs help and Duncan's going to go help him. But he ends up in the movies. That would have worked out. I mean, it's, what was it? It's Highlander Endgame. Duncan ends up being in the movies, in Highlander Endgame and Highlander 4 or 3. Yeah, 3 and 4. And, what ends up happening is, in Highlander 3, Connor gets Duncan to kill him. Connor gets Duncan to kill Connor. So the two of them can fight Kell, the other immortal, in the movie. But that's what I would have done, is I would have fixed it to where, as the show Highlander was nearing its end, I would have worked it to where they could have segued that into Highlander 3, the movie. But, what they could have done is leave Richie Ryan back in the TV world and, just, casually mention him or something. But not, show him on the movie. Or if they wanted to, could have brought him into the movies, too. I mean, that's, an entire possibility. I mean, it's 1,000,001 different things. Could have been. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. But definitely nothing against Elizabeth Gracen. I mean, like I said, she's a very pretty lady and a very good actress, but her show, Highlander the Raven, left something to be desired, a lot. A lot. I mean, seriously. I mean, really. I mean, I would have more than gladly been okay, just rework it the way that and that's how they should have ended it. Of course, that's my opinion. you know, and I think that they really could have done better by doing like something like that. Because I've been thinking about that. I'm like, and I got to rewatch it, like, and you know how you like once you see something like second, third, fourth, fifth time, you start thinking, they could have done this, or they could have done this, or they could have done X, or they could have done F, or N, or P, or G, instead of what A, B, and C, what they did. I mean, and it's just I really feel that way. They could have handled that whole thing differently, and I still stand by what I said in that other video about, like they could have ended the series differently, and it's just like a whole bunch of other things. But yeah, but that's how I feel that they could have ended it, and that occurred to me as I was, watching season 6's last 2 episodes, which are called To Be and Not to Be. And I'll tell you who else I think they could have also, if they didn't whack him off in season 2 or 3, I think it was 3, is Roger Daltrey's character, Hugh Fitzcairn. I think that Roger Daltrey is an absolute treasure to have on a show like that, because I mean, he was so funny. And it's like, they used him in a lot of flashbacks in seasons 3, 4, 5, and 6, but I wish they hadn't killed him, like in season 2 or 3, which are like, it was like the beginning of 3 or the end of 2. Season 2, they whacked his character off, and then they could only use him as flashbacks. I'm like, hello, y'all could have, or I think he died in season 2, at the beginning of season 2, now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, he died like very early on in the series. I'm like, okay, you killed off a character that had potential. I'm like, either Roger Daltrey wanted off the show, or y'all are getting lazy and couldn't think of anybody, like show like a good guy dying. Like they killed, Darius got killed at the end of season 1, but there's a reason why his character got killed off. And I don't remember if I mentioned it in the other video, but the reason why Darius, that immortal, got killed off is because the dude playing him had brain cancer and died back in 1993. That's why Darius got killed off. The guy playing him ended up dying of brain cancer. And it's like he didn't tell anybody, hey, I got brain cancer. It's just like that, like he just up and died just like that. I mean, I'm not trying to sound crass or anything about that. I thought that was awful when I found out about it a while back. But yeah, I'm like, that's another character that I can understand why they killed off the character Darius in the show. I mean, that's one of those things that, it's like, perfectly lovely, wonderful explanation. I not to sound sarcastic or crass or whatever, but, really, I mean, that's one of those things. It is what it is, with that character. I mean, that one I understood. And granted, they used a lot of, like, stock footage of Darius from season 1 because, like I said, like, whenever they showed Darius in, like, the later seasons, it was all stock footage from season 1 because the German fella playing him died back in 1993. Which, when I found out about that, I thought, well, that stinks. I mean, it's like, he was an okay character, but I mean, he just, it's like, I would have liked to have seen, if the German guy playing Darius hadn't died of brain cancer in 1993, 30 years ago now, I part of me is curious to like what they would have done with him, because I think they could have had Darius help, like if he was still around, like if he hadn't gotten killed off at the end of season 1 because the person playing him died. I think, and this is just me being curious, if Darius had made it to season 5, I would have liked to have seen what happened with him helping Duncan fight Ahriman. I would have liked to have seen that, but, like I said, it is what it is. I mean, I can't help the fact that, well, the guy died. oh well. Um, but anyway, I just, I really do. I think what should have happened is they should have, like, when they ended, this is, I got to go back, I digress back to the whole thing with Richie Ryan. What should have happened is, like, they leave him in jail, like, where they're, like, prosecuting him right then. But that's how that story ends with him. Like, he's in jail. He's in jail. They're holding him in jail. They locked him up until the end of the trial. And just leave it at that. Just leave that at that, and then pull Connor, or have Connor pull Duncan into the movie, into the movies with him, and then, take that from, like, that storyline from there, but then start a show with Richie Ryan, and, like, it'd start where Highlander left off, like, okay, like, that is, like, it starts with, like, him being put on trial for whatever it is, and, like, and it's like his lawyer ends up finding, like, DNA proof that he didn't do it, or, like, a witness and DNA and, like, 4 or 5 other things before the trial ends, and he presents it, gets Richie off, and then, and this is, like, the start of the show, and that's where that starts, and then it's, like, him traveling around, and, like, what would happen is, like, he goes to the DeSalvo martial arts studio that Connor leaves for him with a bunch of money hid somewhere to start the dojo and gym up for real, and, like, a letter from him saying, and have, like, Adrian Paul do a voiceover and say, Richie, if you're reading this, this means you've gotten out of jail and that whole situation has been resolved, kind of a la Stephen King's The Shawshank Redemption kind of thing. That's what I was thinking. And I think it would have been interesting to be like, okay, you're out. Here's the dojo. And I've hid some money, and, like, have him hide the money, like, in the floorboards or something, or somewhere where, like, nobody would think, like, in a spot where nobody could get to it unless, like, they, basically did the hokey pokey with it and, figured it out. And he's like, I hid the money, and, like, and he'd give the letter with the instructions and a sealed envelope to Richie's lawyer to give Richie when Richie gets out. And I think that would have, been a great way to, start the show where Richie is, the star of the show, and then have, like, Elizabeth come on and, I mean, granted, Amanda is more Duncan's honey bunny, because if you see in the show, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to expound on that one. Those two paid Chief Bootknocker a visit. Yeah. But anyway, that's how I would have started up the spin-off show. It's like, have him get off of, charges, and then, like, have him sue, like, the city or something for it, for false imprisonment and arrest. I mean, that would have been, I would have liked to have seen how they handled that, because I'd been like, yeah. Of course, this was the 90s, the 1990s, People didn't think like that back then. But that would have been, that's what I think should have happened, is they should have fixed it to where it's like they didn't kill Richie off, but, like, they let him live, but, have him get out of jail and have all, this thus and so and so on and so forth, and, this whole dog and pony show, like, to get him out, but in his own show. And then, like, as he's, like, when he gets out, and once he gets the dojo, like, it shows him rebuilding the DeSalvo dojo and gym, and dealing with, like, immortals and stuff coming to fight him, and have him live under an alias or something while he's there, because I think what had happened is somebody saw him die, spectacularly, as Richie Ryan, just have him live as, like, have him make up some name or something, in the dojo. But yeah, that's how I would have handled it. Surely they, could have been more creative, is what I'm getting at. There's more than one way to end a show. It's like just leave it on a cliffhanger, or something. But anyway, that was just something that I, have been thinking of. But of course, Stan Kirsch passed away by suicide 3 years ago. I think he hung himself. I'm not 100% sure, but he killed himself January 13th, 2020. And, today's March the 3rd, 2023. So he's been gone, for 3 years and 3 months, ironically enough. But, I just think I really liked him because I liked that character a lot. Because, and this is something I said on Facebook about him, is I really believe that if they'd let Richie live, they could have spun him out into something, like, he had potential, is what I'm getting at. The character had potential, and, like, I don't know why they didn't, develop his character further than being, like, the comedic relief between Duncan and Tessa, or, like, the juxtapose of Duncan. And something else is, okay, here Richie was born in the 20th century, obviously, because he was like a 20-something-year-old guy in the 1990s. Well, I think they could have used a 20th century perspective on that versus mythos, who'd been around for 3,000 years. Amanda, who'd been around for 2, and Duncan, who'd been around for 400 years. It's like, I'm like, yo, y'all could have, it's like just to see, like, okay, it's these concepts from people that have been around for hundreds and thousands of years getting dumped on somebody who was born in the 20th century. How would they handle that? That would have been what I would have done, and that's why I think they could have developed Richie further, is because, like, okay, unlike, like vampires or werewolves, who can procreate, these folks can't procreate, but this would be like a different, way, and then have Richie get like another person who was born in the 20th century become an immortal, and he helps them out. And it's like the two of them end up in a relationship kind of like what Duncan and Amanda had, in a way. But, it could, like, they could have run like 50 million different ways with it. But it's just, one of them things, like I said, it's like, thought been itching my head, and I just felt like sharing, with you all, because it's worth a share. Well, anyway, I've been yapping long enough, so I'm going to let y'all go here, and I hope y'all stay safe, because it's been thunderstorming here, and I heard that over in, like, Northern California, they've got like 8 to 10 feet of snow right now. And like I said, today's March the 3rd, 2023, so it's like, yay! Crazy weather. Well, I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a good evening. Bye.